The man went to sleep healthy, but woke up as a zombie. Hello all. This is Jacobson and this is a brief retelling of the 13th and 14th episodes of the 8th season of the zombie series The Walking Dead. You can see the previous episodes at the links in the video description. As soon as this video gets 300 likes, I will release the next part. Enjoy watching it.
Morgan is standing guard in the woods when he has a vision of a dead, bloodied Gavin. He emerges from this state and hears a horn in the distance warning him of the arrival of the rescuers. He runs to his truck and honks, alerting other observers. Daryl turns on the air alarm. Jerry, Tobin, and Cal hear the horn from their post and prepare for battle. At the Barrington house, the survivor prepares for battle. Henry begs Ickle to let him fight, but Iz and Carol order him to stay inside. In the medical trailer of the Hilton, Dr. Dana questions Siddiq about his medical education when he offers his help, ridiculing him for his lack of experience. Then Dana smiles and tells him she approves of him. That night, Jerry notices an approaching convoy of rescuers. He signals Maggie. The convoy of saviors stumbles upon a strip with spikes. Maggie calls Simon on the radio and demands to talk to Negan. She threatens to kill 38 rescue prisoners if Simon doesn't back down. Simon writes off the prisoners as damaged goods and continues the attack. Dwight warns that Negan may still be alive and will punish Simon if he kills everyone in the hilltop. When Daryl rides up from the rear on a motorcycle and opens fire with a machine gun, Hilltop opens the main gate. Simon's convoy follows Daryl through the gate, but the Hilltop men block the convoy with a bus and open fire on the rescuers. The real battle begins. On the balcony of the Barrington house, several rescuers are hit by arrows, which forces Maggie to order Diana to bring the prisoners to her office. One of the prisoners, Alden, offers to help protect the Hilltop, but Maggie ignores him. In the midst of the battle, the Savior wounds Tobin in the belly. Carol kills the Savior and runs to help Tobin. She points her gun when someone approaches them, but lowers her weapon when she realizes it's Siddiq. He offers to stay with the seriously wounded Tobin while Carol joins the fight. Simon spots Tara and orders Dwight to track her down. Daryl sees Simon and Dwight sneaking up on Tara and shouts a warning. Dwight shoots Tara's arm with an arrow before Simon can shoot her. And Tongues or Rosita shoot off the headlights on the Savior's cars. It gets quiet and dark in the hilltop. Simon assumes that the hilltop people have escaped and are preparing to enter the Barrington house. When they disperse to surround the house, a number of headlights turn on and blind the rescuers, and the windows of the house light up from shots aimed at the rescuers. Meanwhile, Rick and other observers rush into the hilltop from the gate side with weapons at the ready. Rick confronts Siddiq and Tobin and tells them to keep their heads down. During the fight, Morgan hallucinates and sees Gavin again. The Saviors are fleeing from the hilltop. Rick and Maggie chase them as the rescuers drive off in their cars. Rick tells Maggie that he saw Negan earlier that day and tried to kill him. The next day, the hilltop is cleaned after the battle. Maggie says about the NID that they don't have enough resources to fight off another attack. Tara downplays the significance of her injury, but Daryl refuses to forgive Dwight. Rick removes the boards from the bedroom window. Michonne tries to talk to him and offers to treat his wound, but he insists on cleaning up after himself. Maggie watches Jerry dig graves for the dead. She cuts Alden's bonds and tells him to bury the dead saviors, guarded only by feces. Disappointed by what is happening, Alden makes it clear that he no longer considers the saviors his people. Diane praises Maggie for being a good leader. Maggie regrets not killing Negan. Carol visits Tobin, who is recovering in the infirmary, and apologizes for leaving him in Alexandria. She admits that she began to have feelings for him. Alden digs graves for saviors. Jesus locks the prisoners in a pen. Meanwhile, Henry finds a rifle in the house and sneaks away with it. Siddiq offers to treat Rick's wound and tries to comfort him about Carl's death. "Don't," Rick says and leaves. That night, Maggie checks on how the Hilltoppers are doing, who are preparing beds on the floors of the main house. One of the wounded Hilltoppers, Wesley, tells Maggie that he feels fine after Siddiq and Dr. Dana sewed up his wound. Tobin dies in his sleep in the middle of the night. After a while, he comes to life and turns into a walker who devours an unsuspecting nurse and Dr. Dana. In the main house, a wounded Wesley comes to life and falls down the stairs, where a group of people are sleeping. The inanimate Tobin, as well as the newly revived Kurt and Dr. Dana, are attracted from the infirmary to the Barrington house by the sound of a crying baby. Henry approaches the rescuer's pen with a gun and demands to tell who killed his brother Benjamin. He threatens to start shooting at the saviors until someone confesses, but he is interrupted by screams from the main house. The horror begins when the walkers attack the sleeping survivors. Rick, Michonne, Daryl and Ezekiel, Jesus and Sadiq wake up and fight back, helping their comrades get outside to safety. After several walkers are killed, they notice that all the walkers were their people. Henry enters the pen with an ultimatum: if someone does not confess within 10 seconds, he will open fire. The savior, who was injured during the attack, died in her sleep. She comes to life and bites the savior standing next to her, causing panic. Henry starts shooting. Jared attacks him and runs away with the others. Tobin attacks a hilltop woman named Birdie, locked in one of the bedrooms with Bruce. Carol fights him off. She reports that Tobin was not bitten. Rick remembers that Negan's bat was covered in the blood of walkers, which leads them to believe that the saviors used their weapons to infect them. The wounded Bruce, who has not yet converted, eavesdrops and realizes that he is also infected. Bruce asks the group to kill him, as he will soon turn, and he does not have the strength to commit suicide. Unfortunately, they are fulfilling his request. Rick and Daryl inform Tara. Wounded by the savior's arrow, Tara resigns herself to her fate. Siddiq goes to visit the prisoners and kills the revived savior. He almost dies at the hands of the second walker, but he is unexpectedly saved by Alden, who kills the walker with a shovel. When Maggie and several militia members show up, Alden explains that he and several other saviors decided to stay at Hilltop of their own free will, even though they no longer represent strategic value to the militia. Alden notes that the captured rescuers mean nothing to Negan and Simon and says they had many chances to escape. Seeing that the deserting saviors are having a hard time closing the gates from 100 to walkers attracted by the shootout during the battle, Diana and several members of the militia rush to help, and Maggie seems to accept Alden's explanation. Both Ezekiel and Carol are looking for Henry, who has disappeared. Morgan closes her eyes and sees Gavin again. Maggie and Rick watch Jerry Jesus dig new graves for the dead in the ever-expanding Hilltop Cemetery. Jedi's is crying in her room. Then she wakes up, packs her suitcase and picks up a familiar baseball bat. She unlocks the container where Negan is and pulls him out. At the Hilltop, Illinois asks Carol for help in finding Henry, but she refuses. Il realizes that Carol thinks Henry is dead. Tara tells Daryl that her arrow wound didn't infect her. She concludes that Dwight shot her with a clean arrow, and refuses to immediately seek to kill him. Michonne encourages Rick to cope with his emotions and read the letter that Carl wrote to him. Morgan tells Carol that he is going to look for Henry and Carol joins him. Daryl is working on his motorcycle and notices a knife with dried blood, which gives him an idea. Diane reports that they don't have enough ammunition to repel another big attack. Assuming that the saviors also have few bullets, Daryl suggests that they fight them hand to hand. Rosita notices that Eugene is probably making ammunition for the saviors. Jedi's checks his watch and prepares to burn Lucille in a wheelbarrow. Negan apologizes for the massacre and insists that he is not to blame. Jedi swings Lucille at him, but stops right next to his face. Morgan sees Henry in the woods and runs after him, but discovers that Henry is just a hallucination. Carol admits that she accompanied Morgan to look after him, not to look for Henry. Morgan notices the trail left by the escaped prisoners' rescuers. Rick watches Judith play. He looks at Carl's hat and stands up. Rick asks Alden where he thinks the escapees from the saviors might be hiding. Alden suggests Rick to stop by a nearby bar, but asks Rick to return the saviors to Hilltop, not kill them. Jedi's watch is beeping. She leaves Nig alone for a while and returns with a walker tied to a cart. Negan shoots her with a pistol he managed to get and threatens to burn a stack of sentimental photos with a torch. Morgan and Carol notice a herd crossing the road. A walker approaches them with Henry's battle stick, which has pierced his belly. Carol goes in search of Henry, and Morgan pursues the escaped rescuers. Jedi's begs Negan not to burn her photos. Negan explains that Lucille is all he has left of his wife. Jedi's watch is beeping again. She rams a walker into a Nagana and takes away a flare. To her horror, the flare falls into a puddle of water and the flame goes out. A helicopter appears overhead and freezes. Jedi's runs after another torch, but while she is lighting it, the helicopter turns around and flies away. She is about to burn Lucille when Negan finally talks her out of it. He vows to settle everything with the culprit of the massacre. Rick catches up with Morgan in the woods. Morgan threatens Rick with his fighting stick, momentarily forgetting who Rick is. "I'm wrong," he says, lowering his weapon. Rick suggests they kill the saviors together. Rick and Morgan find a severed arm and leg with visible walking bites. Someone knocks Rick out. When Rick wakes up, he finds himself tied up next to Morgan in an abandoned bar. Jared, the escaped rescuers, are discussing what to do with the infected. Jared insists that they abandon the dying saviors and deliver Rick to Negan. Rick gives his word that he won't hurt them if they return to Hilltop. A herd barges into the bar, and the living are quickly outnumbered. The saviors free Rick and Morgan so they can help deal with the herd. Rick and Morgan kill the walkers and, when the right moment comes, methodically destroy the saviors. Morgan lures Jared into a trap outside the gate and watches as he is devoured. The dying savior reminds Rick that he gave his word not to harm them. Rick says he lied and kills the savior. Rick asks Morgan why he decided to save him back in Atlanta when they were strangers. Morgan replies that it was because his son was with him. Negan breaks free at the dump and invites Jedis to join the saviors. She refuses. Carol walks through the woods at night and hears Henry's pleas for help. Finding him surrounded by walkers, she kills them all. They return to the hilltop, and Henry reunites with Keel. Carol also tells Keel that after her daughter's death she lost herself, but in Rick's group she found a better version of herself. Rick and Morgan return to Hilltop covered in blood. Morgan tells Henry that he killed the man who killed his brother. Morgan is sitting alone and crying. Jedis returns to her room and goes to bed. Negan drives towards the shelter and notices someone on the road. He stops and tells the man to sit down. Negan stays in the shelter and instructs the guards to keep his arrival a secret. Daryl and Rosita are watching the bullet factory outpost. They see Eugene getting a batch of hundreds of shell casings to make new bullets. Rosita decides that instead of destroying the machines, they will destroy the man, implying that she intends to kill Eugene. Daryl agrees. The face prepares and reads Carl's letter.